Hey there YouTube, AJ here. And when I left you last, I had just finished getting together my front radius rod mounts for the rear of my split wishbones on the front end. And wasn't sure what I was going to do at that point for the next step, but I've decided that since I'm in that mode and I just want to keep that momentum going, if I can get the bottom of the car kind of squared away, it'd be a good thing. So I'm going to start now on getting the mounts for the fronts of my rear radius rods that hold the back end in place. Now if we look underneath here, I made this transmission mount out of part of a F1 Ford pickup cross member. I wish I'd had the whole cross member, but I didn't. I just had that center section in the mount, so I went ahead and just made that. I'm planning on building off of this and making my clutch pedal assembly mount, and as well as bringing in legs for making a K member, so to strengthen up everything in here. This isn't going to be the only thing kind of hanging out here when we're all said and done, but as you can tell, my rear radius rods come from way back there at the rear brake drums up, and they actually come right underneath the edges of my F1 mount. Now I don't want my mounts this low. Obviously I need to cut these and insert tie rod ends, and I could do that. I can make my mounts that low, I guess, and be right in that area somehow, but I really don't want to get another point hanging down lower here. I don't think that'll look good. I just don't like that. I'm gonna have to make something hang down, and I already don't like how far down this hangs. Even though it's not my lowest point on the scrub line of the car, the oil pan up here is definitely lower than that. I still just don't want something else hanging down. It'll look odd. I really think there's no way to get around it this time. I'm going to have to pie cut these radius rods back there, so they will come up, and in the end they'll be coming into this area right here, and that's where they're going to mount. Now I did also want to come up with some kind of old part that I could use to make these mounts and, you know, make them unique and stuff, but they are hidden under the car. No one's going to see them unless they really get underneath there. I still would like to do it, but the truth is I haven't been able to come up with anything that I think would make a good mount. I just can't find it. So on this case, I'm going to use the keep it simple stupid principle, and I already have these, so I'm just going to go ahead and use these Speedway mounts, but I'll have to beef them up, I think, a little bit, put in some bracing. So, but I think it'll be fine once we're all done. So what I'm thinking, the taper comes in from this side. So let's go ahead and throw a tie rod in there. We'll just snug this down so we can move it around. So option one would be to come in here something like this. That seems fairly doable, I think. Obviously cut off the bottom here, probably put some bracing on the inside. Maybe cut this a little shallower so it's closer. That might not be bad. It would be better to potentially cut it that way. I would get it up pretty high, and I could weld it to this piece as well. That might not be a bad way to go there. So I have to cut this to where it would sit flat. It doesn't want to go. It's not going to go. It's hitting the. It's hitting this. Also, I don't think when I bring this straight up, I don't want to be moving this in and out. If I can all help it, I already got to cut this thing at the end. I don't want to be bending it this way in or out as well. I just want to be able to bend it up. And I think if I mount it from the outside, like this, then this piece is too far outside of my radius rods. So, okay, what can we do if we mount it this way? Is that going to put us in the ballpark? That seems to be kind of more in line. But that's going to be welded. We'll be cutting it off there. We won't have a lot to weld with there. What if we do... That has potential. That radius rod is hitting the back of the F1 member as well at that place. This is hitting this screw hole, but that can be cut off or bent flat. I'm thinking maybe I need to bend this bracket flat, put it in here, extend a plate down to cover this whole side. If I can get it up in this area, it would be more into that, pushing into this corner, which would be all more support. Okay, so if we do this, I could flatten out this upper piece here, this wing, and then cut it off square. Could always put in a brace here. Can brace it on the back side. I like having this nut out because it's the same as this one over here on the front mount. So at least that would be consistent. So I kind of like the idea of having it go this way. Well, this is actually pretty convenient. I could weld here, weld on the back side through here, across the bottom. I think that would be about the right diameter. We'll have to measure that because, you know, we want this to be a snug fit into here. I'm guessing this steel is 1/8 3/16 thick. If I'm guessing if I use the same diameter here to the same diameter here, it should match or should be close. I've got about 1.5 fingers width between the head of the tie rod end and the Ford F1 transmission, so I don't think I want it to go too much further forward, and that seems to be a good lineup point anyway to make sure I get these the same side to side. This would be an easy way to tack it into place as well. I could cut them at the top. I can flatten this one too, so it's got plenty to, maybe that's the way to go. So here's what I'm thinking right now. We take this piece, flatten these wings out on both sides, take and cut this one at the point here, wherever this wing kind of lays out, it ends up to be the same width as the F1 transmission mount. That's where I cut it square down here. Do that on both sides. That way I could line up this front edge, this bottom edge, and that should put this point the same on both sides. Then I just have to cut the top at whatever distance it is from here to where these meet. That would give me this whole perimeter down this side across the bottom, and then the back side of the F1 transmission mount to weld to. I would have to bend these up higher. Maybe that's just the way I should go. I should just start mocking it up to that point. I'm worried that this isn't going to be big enough for the bung. I guess we'll have to figure that out when we get there. For right now, let's go ahead and slap the other side together like this, and then see how it looks coming down on top of these rods from up there. Okay, so this one lines up almost right across on top of here, so that's good there. This one, I don't know if it's the way I got it sitting, if something's maybe a little tweaked, I don't know, but this one I got to put just a little pressure on the radius rod to bring it in line, but I think it'll be fine compared to the other one. Who knows, maybe I got to do a little adjusting on the rear end. Maybe it's sitting twisted right now. But anyway, I think it's close enough that the concept could possibly work. So this is a part of the subframe of the body, cross member for the frame. And if you look down here, you can see where I've got the bung for the tie rod lined pretty much dead above the radius rod. So all it has to do is come up, cut the radius rod right here, bring it up, etc. So I think it's all close enough that I'm going to move ahead with that plan. So I'll flatten out the wings on those radius rod mounts from Speedway, then cut the bottom edge to where it's the same width as the F1 transmission mount, measure from that point up to cut off the top one at that distance so where it mates up perfectly with it, and then we'll come back and clamp it in and see how it fits. Slight change of plans. Still going to press these wings flat, still going to cut the bracket down this way, but I'm no longer wanting to weld it flat to that F1 transmission cross member, because when I do that, it ends up making the angle of my tie rod end, you know, pretty acute, bending backwards, and I don't like that. It just makes it a weird angle, and I think that'll limit movement, and I don't think it's good for it, is what it comes down to. So instead, I want that tie rod stud to be at a 90-degree angle to the radius rod. That way, that means this can't be straight on like this anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this plate flat, and then I'm going to put a bend in it where it comes off of the cross member mount. I'm going to bend that end out to match the angle of the radius rod. That makes sense? And then we'll add braces in that way. Yeah, makes sense to me. Okay, those are mostly flat now.
Mostly.
Okay, now that we got our bracket flat, let's see. Okay, so I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to basically cut it square right here at that point where this bend started. It's going to be wider than I need at this point, but that'll also give me a place to tie into this bracket. And then once we get that cut and fit on there, we'll mark the point here and bend this out that way so it's in line here. So our tie rod ends will be square, and then we'll brace accordingly. Alright, so we want to keep these two brackets as close to identical as possible. So we're going to place the flat sides together and bolt them together. Tighten those up. Now we'll go and cut these corners off. So we got these cut to the same size. See how much noise I can make. Like so. Now we want to put them up into place and mark the side where we want to bend them out. We also kept the little tabs that were cut off because they may end up making nice little braces. So if we place this up in position like that, keep our top edge flush with this because we're going to weld all that together. Keep our back edge flush with this edge. And if we do that on both sides, we should keep our pieces the same side to side. There we go. All right. So now, okay, so the camera died when I was marking my plates, but I did get a line on both of them. That's where I want to bend them. So this one's going to bend this way. I left this part on here. That's how far I need to bend it, basically parallel to this in order to get my stud straight. So I'm going to use this one to compare why I bend this one. And I got this one already in the vise ready to go on the line. And hopefully we can bend it. Use this to tell how far I need to bend it. I'm going to be bending this one that away. I have crescent wrenches ready to bend with. I have a torch to heat this up because I think just beating this over, I'm not going to get a good bend, especially since I can't get down here on the corners. So I'm going to use a torch to heat this all up and then hopefully bend it over easier. We'll see. Got plenty of stuff on this little bench here to catch on fire to make sure comedy ensues. You know, that kind of stuff. All right. Oh, yeah, and I got a fire extinguisher down there ready to go. So if you see me dive that way, things went bad. Alright, so this is really hot right now, so I can't move forward. Yeah, I got it bent the right way. First time I overbent it, so I had to heat it back up and bend it back. I got it to where it looks like it's pretty parallel to that joint there. So now we got to try to bend this one to be the same as that one and get the angles pretty close together. Okay, we got the other one bent. They're looking pretty good in terms of matching. So we're going to let them cool down from there. Then we can check them a little closer when they're cooler and we can handle them. But I think I got it pretty good. I don't think I'll need to use the torch to, if I need to bend it a little more here and there, I won't need to use the torch again. So I can go ahead and put that away. I think we're really close now. So we'll let these cool off and then clamp them onto the cross member and mock it up again and see what we got. All right, well, it's the next day and they're cool enough to handle now, and actually I'm pretty pleased with how they turned out. If I held them up in line with one another and mirror them, I actually measured them before I put these tie rod ends on there, and everything seemed to be pretty darn close to being one mirrored the other. So now we just need to take and mock them up on the transmission member and then see how the tie rod end lines up with the radius rods. Well, I've got the piece back in the vise. It seems I bent them a little too far, so I need to bring them back a little bit. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do that without heat. It's a little further. Alright, you stay here. I'm going to go test fit this one again. Alright, that worked out pretty good on the other side. So let's get this one bent to match, and we should be good to go. Oh, I got that one pretty close on the first shot. Alright, I think I got that first try. So let's stick them on and see how they look. Okay, it's kind of hard to see down in there between the cross members, but it is pretty close to in line on both sides now. It's really hard to try to get a good angle on it, but I think we're definitely close enough now with the tie rod end at a 90-degree angle to the bracket. So I think we're all good there. So here's where it starts getting a little tricky. I can go ahead and tack those brackets into place just so I don't have to use clamps to hold them. They're close enough to where if I have to do any tweaking later on, I can with them in place. So I got to do that. And then the tricky part, I got to start modifying the radius rods. I have to figure out back here where I'm going to pie cut it to make this end up front come up to the fitting. It's got to go up quite a bit. So back there we got to pie cut it, and I'm not sure how big of a pie cut to make or where to make the pie cut. I think I'll have to take off the tire and make it as far back as I can. Take off the tire. I'm going to go as far back as I can on the radius rod in front of the drums, give myself room to cut it and then tack it back together. I also need to cut off this end and work on fitting this bung into the end of it. And it's kind of a chicken and egg, which one I do first. I think what I'm just going to have to do in order to be able to bend this up at all is just come someplace in front of where I know the bung's going to be and cut it, and then I'll have to cut back further to the place it actually needs to be, like a final cut. Otherwise, when I try to bend the radius rod up, it's going to just hit on the bottom of the transmission member. I won't be able to figure out how much I need to cut it back there to bring it up the right amount here. Does that all make sense? It does to me. So I know what I got to do. Now I just need to do it. Okay, well, I had to take them back off because I forgot to bevel all my edges. Now I've got my edges beveled, got them repositioned, clamped into place. So now we're gonna tack weld these brackets on. GoPro, stop recording. Alright, so it's all tacked in there on both sides now. There's pretty solid tacks. I didn't go crazy because I don't know if I have to change this in the future, but so, you know, we didn't want to go too crazy too fast. So I want to make it where it's removable if I have to make changes. So next, I don't know what's next. Either cut the radius rods in the back and pie cut them so I can bend them up, or maybe I'm thinking I want to eyeball where my bungs will insert for my tie rod ends and cut them. So I think that's what I'm going to do next, is cut these. Now I'm sure there's a better way to do what I'm about to attempt. I'm sure somebody, that's the wrong side. I'm sure somebody will tell me. And yes, I know that bolt's going to have to move. It'll get flipped. All these bolts are going to be flipped eventually. Anyway, what I'm about to do now, I'm just kind of eyeballing the angle of this tie rod end pointed back to where the mount is on the rear drum for the radius rod. I have no, this is tapered in two different ways. I have no idea how to cut this square. Right now I'm just going to try to put the blue tape on there so I can make a mark and hopefully be able to see it at roughly where I think this is going to line up. I've left myself play up here, but you know, I'd like to get it as accurate as possible in the first attempt, because I was thinking about how am I going to try to duplicate this on the other side, and the only way I can really think of duplicating it is to take the piece I cut off, flipping it and using it to make my mark on the other one. Hopefully I don't waste these radius rods. Unfortunately, it isn't as easy as just drawing a straight line down, because when this bends up, it's going to bend at an arc. I'm thinking I need to cut just a little further forward than straight down. So if I make that mark there, make this mark here, and my thought process is, if I cut square, which is going to be a pipe dream, cutting it in position like this, but if I cut this square in front of the black line, then hopefully this will all line up. I'm about at the point where there's only one way to find out, and that's to cut the thing and get on with it. Okay, moment of truth. Oh, not bad fit. Not bad fit at all. It's about right. Yes. I don't think I want to take it any further down. It'll get too sloppy. This cut was pretty square, so I'm happy with that. It's going to be just a little too long, so we are going to have to run that in. So, I don't know. Overall, better than I expected. So I guess over to the other side and do the same thing. What we're doing now is just getting our general area ready for the mark. We're going to take this and do it the exact same way I did over there. by using the square, lining it up with the flange here, and making our mark. Now, in a perfect world, I cut again on just this side of the mark, and these two should be pretty darn near the exact same length. But I do not live in a perfect world, not by a long shot. So I'm going to do a secondary check here. I'm going to try to get these pieces lined up as close as I can to the same. Could use something flat to stick again. There we go. And would you look at that? How about that? That's pretty darn close. I think we'll be in the ballpark there. Had a couple issues with that one. I didn't get this cut quite as square, but I think it's square enough that we can work with it and, you know, still get this in square. So I think we'll be fine there. I don't know if you caught it on the time lapse, but when the cutoff began to droop, the wheel bound up and broke my wheel and kicked back, and, you know, caused all kinds of fun stuff to happen. Excitement ensued. So I need to do some trim up on that one and square it up. I'll get a new wheel on this and trim this up and get it square. I should show you though, when I cut the ends off, the pieces I cut off are almost dead exactly the same height. So my links are really good. So I'm happy. I don't know how many grinders I have, but I got one of these freaking pin wrenches left, and look what I just did to it. It just mangled itself. These things don't last at all for me. Maybe like by Harbor Freight Tools and stuff, but you know, now I don't have a way to get this out. So I'm going to try something here. We'll see if it works. Maybe it's something that'll work for other people. I'm going to try to put my locking plate in my vise and hold the locking button on the arbor brake. Oh, it worked. Here's your pro tip for the day, I guess. How to get this off when your cheap pin wrench breaks constantly. Oh well, price you pay. Okay, you're not gonna believe this, but I may have just got really lucky. I hope so. I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched yet, but I was squaring up the far side over there, the passenger side. Got it squared where the bung would fit in it. And I noticed it seemed to flex up like it would go up to fit in here, and it will. So I shortened this almost all the way up and put that in there. Now I don't know what that's going to do to my pinion angle. I got to check it yet. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the same thing over here to the driver's side and hope that I get really lucky and my pinion angle is correct. That may be way too much to hope for, but you know what? Before I go cutting on these radius rods, I'm darn sure going to try it. Maybe I'm due for some luck, I know. All right, see, that's going to be about right there. I know it's springing back. It's trying to fight it from going down any further. So, you know, and I don't know if you can tell the far side at the same time when I press up on here to bring it to where it would be. That one goes up too as well, as you would expect, because they're linked through the axle. But what we need to do is block this up to there, because that's where it's going to ride. And then check the pinion angle on my axle. And let's hope it's right. Okay, so we're going to take this bottle jack here, put it under our mounting point, roll this up to where that wants to sit. Now I know I still need to do a little bit of fine tuning on this, you know, bevel it before I weld it, all that. I got to do that on both sides. But we are now looking pretty good on both sides, all the way back down. Now the issue becomes, how bad is our pinion angle? And unfortunately, I don't have a really good spot to check my pinion angle on this thing. No way. There's no good flat spot. I never get this lucky. But if I'm measuring it correctly right now, it's at 3.1 degrees. 0.1 degree above what I'm shooting for. I mean, come on. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I said I was due for some luck, and it appears I got lucky, because I'm measuring it, every place I'm measuring it, I'm getting like 2.8 to 3.3 degrees. And I can't find a really good flat spot, you know, to give me a really true measurement. Okay, well, here's the deal. I am close. Close enough that I am not going to start messing with cutting these radius rods yet. So we're going to call this video done with the fact that I made my mounts, that I got my mounts made for my rear radius rods. They're just tacked in, of course. You know, we're going to weld like everything else in this car, everything's tacked in. So we'll have to weld all this later, weld in our braces that we're going to put in here, etc. I'm also going to weld these later when I have better access. But for now, we're going to call it really, really good. And I'm going to be grateful that something worked out, or I think it worked out. Later on, we'll try to get to where we can measure things more accurately and reassess at that point. But for now, we are going to call it good. So the moral of the story, boys and girls, sometimes it's better to just be lucky than smart, I guess. Whatever it is, I'll take the luck at this point. I'm shocked, and things like this never work out for me, and I'm probably going to have to come back and redo it later. It'll probably go, nope, you weren't lucky as you thought, but we'll see. We're going to let it ride for now and roll with it, literally. You know, the car is, you're going to be rolling around like this now. I'm kind of beyond words, so I want to thank you all for watching. Appreciate the views, appreciate the likes, the comments, the subscribes. Anything you can do to help the channel grow, I appreciate it. Getting ready to go out of town again, but after that, come back and probably start working on shock mounts, either front or rear. I think that'll be the next step. Maybe steering. I don't know why I'm putting off steering. I need to get a steering wheel in, a steering box in here so I can turn the wheels. I'm probably thinking shock mounts will be next, and then steering. Then pedals. I don't know. It's all got to get done sometime, right? Till then, YouTube. Later. And I know some of you out there may be thinking that I need to do some kind of more support, that these rear radius rods by themselves won't be enough to locate the axle. I am aware of that because I am using an open drive instead of a torque tube. And I know that torque tube handles a lot of the load from the axle to the car, especially the torquing loads where the rear end wants to pivot up and down as the wheels, you know, shove against the ground. So I have a plan for that, I think. Trying to make not a panhard bar, what that goes side to side. What's the torque tube? Torque arm. Torque arm, that's the word I'm looking for. So I have kind of an idea for a torque arm setup, but out of vintage parts. Don't know for sure if it's going to work. That's going to be another installment, but I'll probably do that. Bug. But I'll probably do that once I take the body back off and go to weld the frame up. That way I'll have plenty of access to the middle of the car where I can work on that. So that'll be way down in the future.